The city of Oakland already, and many people throughout the community of Oakland and the world of planning have already identified Howard Terminal as future growth area for the city. So that's not anything new. It's just that there's so much of Oakland that still has been forgotten and left behind, and left out in a big way of all the amazing economic, growth and success this region has had over the last 20, 30, 50 years. I mean, you don't have to look much further than just on the other side of the railroad tracks from the Coliseum right now.
Right.
And so it's kind of like I think it's just saying, let's not expand until we can fix up and take care of and bring along all these other neighborhoods and parts of Oakland that have been historically left out.
Got with us today Noah Friedman, who is the owner and CEO of VibeMap. Is that right?
Yeah, co-founder of VibeMap, and also works with the Oakland 2100 project, and we'll get into that a little bit, and that's amazing.
But what I was hoping Noah would sit down and talk with us today is a little bit about the potentially new stadium for the Oakland A's, the sites that are being talked about, and the Howard Terminal site is the big site that most folks are talking about down near Jack London Square. I thought it'd be a great conversation. So Noah, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Zach. I really appreciate you inviting me here.
Absolutely. So before we jump in, can you just tell us a little bit about VibeMap and kind of what you guys are doing there?
Yeah, cool. Thanks for asking. Yeah, VibeMap is a city discovery app. It's a new product that helps connect you to places and events and experiences that match your vibe. And I think because we're not really focused on that today, we want to get into the A's Stadium and Howard Terminal and Jack London. I think it'll come out a little bit more about VibeMap, but really came out of my background as an urban designer and planner, and really thinking about how we can get people out and enjoying the magic of cities and connecting in real life and bringing people together. Obviously, launching a product like that in the middle of a global pandemic has been a challenge.
Right.
But we've survived, and we're really excited to help bring people together and be a part of that movement. So
I love it. So classically trained designer, and then have moved in and kind of founded this company that is doing software technology around kind of urban planning. Very cool.
Absolutely. And I would just say, like, that's a little shout out to anybody who's a designer that is watching this. Like, your process and your thoughts and your innovative ideas have so much more value than you probably even realize. Like, just go out there and like try and pitch them and sell them. And like, there are people out there that want to support you.
I love it. Very cool. On the topic of the Oakland A's, and this is a hot button issue right now. This has been, I want to say they've been talking about this off the top of my head for 2 years at least, maybe 3. You could probably tell me better, but it's been
depends on like.
Okay, at least as a realistic site, right? I know. Oakland A's fans. I grew up in the East Bay. We grew up taking Bart to the Coliseum. It was $1 Wednesdays at the time. It's $2 Wednesdays. It was, at least before COVID. And it was a place that you went. It was a great experience. It was relatively inexpensive. Mm-hmm. You knew what you were getting in the Coliseum. It wasn't going to be, this amazing feat of architecture, but it was fun. But I think, we were saying a little bit off camera, I think A's fans are we're kind of maybe hoping for what happened with the Giants when the Giants got their new ballpark, Pac Ballpark in San Francisco. And it just changed the experience, right? If you knew Candlestick, to go now to San Francisco and go be a part of that is a lot different experience. So Can you talk a little bit about that and just kind of the sites and kind of what your thoughts were?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you bring up the different stadiums and ballparks depending on who your client is. The Giants were actually really very particular about that, by the way. It's a ballpark, not a stadium.
Makes sense.
Yeah, because a stadium sounds so big and scary. And I think that they learned that through the process of the development process and actually the approvals process. They learned that if they called it a ballpark, it sounded smaller and more friendly.
Interesting. Okay.
So, and then I think, Candlestick versus the Coliseum is so interesting too, because, I don't want to diss on the Coliseum. It's designed by Skidmore, Owings and Merrill.
Mm-hmm.
The Coliseum and the arena together are really beautiful pieces of, modernist, brutalist architecture. And, when we were winning World Series with Canseco and McGuire and Ricky Henderson was stealing the bases, like I had some of my best moments of my life in that building, in that
right.
space. So like, I respect that place, and I don't think that it's a throwaway, like most people think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a better fan experience than Candlestick.
Yeah.
And, the story about how the Giants got from Candlestick to the AT&T Park, or, Pac Bell Park, or whatever it's called now, their Giants ballpark, it's actually not super linear. They were trying to go to San Jose,
mm-hmm.
and they convinced the A's to trade them that territory. That used to be A's territory. And the A's gave up that territory to the Giants. And then the Giants pulled this switcheroo and, stayed in San Francisco. And they really benefited from the fact that they landed in the middle of an ongoing master plan, which is
right.
Mission A.
Right.
So when you talk about like the fan experience, that had been already in process as sort of like placemaking exercise by really wonderful and famous urban designers and planners of the time. Karen Alschuler, who's an amazing legend of planning and urban design for the Bay Area, or John Cricken. Like these people were, had been working for a long time to make that neighborhood really lovely and livable.
Right.
And just starting to come about when the Giants wanted to move there. So it's a slight bit different because Howard Terminal is, really far behind in the process in terms of the redevelopment that is going to happen there. I mean,
right.
Eventually there will be redevelopment in the Port of Oakland, and, the pressures are too great. But it's interesting to see the real stories and the timelines and how things came about. And then, of course, how things come back to bite you, like when the A's wanted to move down to San Jose, and the Giants wouldn't give the territory.
They gave those rights away. Yep, I do remember that.
They played pretty hard on them.
They did.
There's no love lost there.
I know there isn't. There is. I mean, so having worked for the A's a little bit, the most busy you would get that Coliseum was obviously playoffs if they were in the playoffs, but the Bay Bridge series, right? I mean, it was the only game we didn't get tickets to because you knew it was going to get sold out. And I think pre-COVID, 2019, they had opened up that third deck, right? And there were A's Giants games in there where that place was sold out to the third deck. And I mean, that stadium's rocking when it's full. So
yeah, for sure.
That's crazy. Yeah. So on the Howard Terminal site, I know, I mean, again, we're not going to poke holes in anything. We're not going to criticize anyone, but I know that there are some challenges with that site, right? And there's some reasons that it's not happening right this moment. Can you talk a little bit about kind of some of those challenges?
Yeah. I mean, I think the city of Oakland already, and many people throughout the community of Oakland and, the world of planning have already identified Howard Terminal as future growth area for the city. So that's not anything new. It's just that there's so much of Oakland that still has been forgotten and left behind and, left out in a big way of all the amazing economic, growth and success this region has had over the last 20, 30, 50 years. I mean, you don't have to look much further than just on the other side of the railroad tracks from the Coliseum right now.
Right.
And so it's kind of like I think it's just saying, let's not expand until we can fix up and take care of and bring along all these other neighborhoods and parts of Oakland that have been historically left out. And we were talking about this earlier. I mean, about, it's not coincidental that these are neighborhoods that are predominantly Black or Latino or Asian. I mean, these are historically redlined neighborhoods that have been left out of all the benefits of growth and development for generations. So right. It's not all on the A's, or even the current generation of people, but it's just to say, like, there's a lot to do in Oakland before we expand to Howard Terminal.
Right.
So that's just like a first big thing. If you take away that issue and just say, okay, fine, like we're going to do it because it's like one of the things about a waterfront city, like the most valuable aspect of a waterfront city is the waterfront.
Right.
Right. And so, it's easy to forget that in the East Bay because it's so industrialized. But over time, especially with Howard Terminal, because it's not a deep water, a terminal, if the cranes are older, and so it's not really going to be able to get upgraded. And like you can't get approvals for an upgrade because the environmental impact would be so huge. So it's going to change. Like it's going to become something different in the future. And the A's, what they've done is they've highlighted that, and they've kind of fast-tracked that process, which is exciting. Like, I think it's really exciting because, like I said, like Oakland could be a waterfront city, and people come to Jack London from around the Bay Area, and they're like, whoa, I didn't know this was here. Beautiful.
I'll admit, I worked in Jack London, and until I went to go interview for that job, I had never been. I lived my entire life in the Bay Area, and I had never spent time down there. And I was like, I didn't even know this existed.
Yeah. It's really crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I know, a lot of things struggle down there because it is very populated on the weekends, but on the weekdays, it is not necessarily for the like restaurants I'm thinking of. I saw some restaurants come and go, definitely. And I know they had like a farmer's market type. I think they have a farmer's market down there. At least they did. Every Sunday, right?
They say rain or shine, and it is beautiful. I mean, I guarantee you, if you go down to farmer's market, Jack London farmer's market on a Sunday, probably going to be sunny. There's something special about that location where it's just always sunny. It's a south-facing waterfront, which is actually pretty cool. Unique. It's funny, like there's north-facing waterfronts, east-facing, west-facing, and south-facing. That's kind of oversimplifying it, but like that's true. When I was working at Perkins & Will as an urban designer and planner, I was able to work on waterfront projects across North America. So Toronto, Pittsburgh, Vancouver, Ottawa, San Francisco, Seattle, Oakland, just really cool projects. And that's where I really figured out, like, waterfronts are just so special. And as places, people want to come to the water, and it needs to be public and needs to be accessible.
Right.
I think I'm saying that to bring us back into like some of the challenges here.
Right.
Which is the accessibility, how to get to and from the stadium.
And I think that was the biggest worry, right? So I know from working down there that there are Amtrak trains that run, and those Amtrak trains are amazing. I mean, it's a great way to get up and down the coast. But there are some pretty serious issues with folks not paying attention. I know that there have been many close calls. I know there have been some fatalities probably once or twice a year of folks not paying attention. And I know that BART doesn't run. It's not terribly far away, but it's a bit of a walk to get to Jack London. Yeah. And, there's some areas that are considered kind of some rougher parts of Oakland that you'd have to get through. Yeah. And I know that's accounting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's disconnected, and that's, that's a challenge across North America, with modern industrialized waterfronts, because up until recently, they've been the backside of cities. And so it was like, okay, build your freeway there and build your railroad there, because nobody really wants to go down to the waterfront. And so then all of a sudden now we're having this reawakening and people realizing that, that the waterfront's so valuable for humans and people to get out and have fun. Right. And industry's going away. So we have all these barriers that are in the way that make it harder for us to do the fun things that we want to do, like have a ballpark. Right. I think we could call it a ballpark on the waterfront. And, I think so, for instance, you mentioned the trains. I mean, it's not just Amtrak. Fortunately and unfortunately, it's heavy rail. Right. And that's coming in and out of the port. Right. And, while, ports will change over time, we want to keep those trains moving through that port, because that's good for the economy. I think the economic, impact of the port and those freight trains going in and out is huge. Now, that's not insurmountable. Like, it's a train track, right?
Okay.
There's a lot of things we can do to overcome that. It's expensive, and it requires time and patience, and it requires approvals. Railroad companies they only actually they're only beholden to the federal government. State and local jurisdiction doesn't play. That's a federal jurisdiction. And then, yeah, so that's going to be a challenge for the A's to overcome. Okay. Now, that railroad needs to be, that track needs to be stabilized and improved, especially for sea level rise. So there's a win-win opportunity there, that if the A's are going to fund, reinforcing it for resiliency over time, and who knows what that could be. There could be some pretty creative solutions there.
Right.
In how to, get over the railroad tracks.
The Coliseum site itself now, right? Where the A's currently play. And I think what we're both kind of getting at, and the mecca in baseball of new parks over the last, 20, 30 years, has been to bring ballparks back to the downtown area, right? San Francisco, off the top of my head, Wrigley, Fenway, right? These are parks that live in the very, downtown portions of large cities, and people, move in and out. San Diego's is in the gas lamp district.
Yeah. If
that wasn't possible for one reason or another, and the A's were left to build at where they're currently at in the current site, do you think that's doable? I mean, do you think they could make it nice enough? Do you think people would be excited enough? Do you think, do you think we can get people on board with that?
Absolutely. I mean, they could have done that 20 years ago.
Right.
And I think it's interesting. I mean, in the ballparks, you mentioned 2 are historic and 2 are new.
Right.
And the 2 that are historic, they have literally 0 parking.
Yes. True.
And they're inside of cities that have historic transit, infrastructure that's really, good and walkable. Like, they're really walkable, and they're in neighborhoods. I mean, so much so that in Wrigley Field, people are actually renting out their roofs.
Right. Right.
Buildings. So that's the beauty of that.
Right.
The challenge of doing that in the 21st century is that we've got parking.
Right.
And, trips. And it doesn't matter how good your drawings look, it's all going to come down to cars.
And that's something I think about when I'm thinking about an A's game versus a Giants game right now. I would consider driving to an A's game and tailgating and having that whole experience, because there is plenty of parking, right? There's parking lots pretty much all around the ballpark. I've driven to a Giants game before, and it's brutal getting out of there. It's brutal getting out of the city. It's brutal just getting out of that particular parking. You have to kind of go find other lots, and if you want to do that. And so public transportation makes a lot more sense. But also with the current Coliseum site, you've got BART that runs right there, right? I mean, it's built already. You've got a ramp and everything. So, that shouldn't be forgotten about, right? It should be something we consider.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and also the city of Oakland spent, a lot of money. I mean, they spent, at least $1 million already, going through the planning and approval process and have an approved EIR.
Right.
So that's a little bit frustrating to me, because you can hear people, some of the propaganda is city government, Oakland city government can't get their act together. And why can't they get their act together? But the truth is, it's really more the A's, because the city government actually spent $1 million and cleared the way to allow the Warriors, the Raiders, and the A's all to stay and have massive amounts of development at the Coliseum. It's all approved with a future, public transit improvement. And all of that, would then benefit the neighborhood there, that East Oakland neighborhood, right, Lockwood Gardens and Coliseum Gardens and all those, communities that have not actually seen any investment.
Right.
Yeah, since they built the Coliseum, which is amazing too, because when they built the Coliseum and the arena, and they built the highway at exactly the same time. So the whole setup is designed for cars. And at the same time, they did build BART and Amtrak right there as well. So it's like, you couldn't actually imagine a more like multimodal site.
Right.
Now, that's also kind of what makes it not attractive to most people, because it doesn't have that old world charm,
right,
that people are looking for in the ballpark, quote unquote, experience.
Right.
You know, my perspective on that, it's interesting because if you look at where the A's are going with their stadium design, you know, and they hired the super modernist architect who's awesome, but the stadium design itself for the project, it doesn't seem to fit right. I mean, it's a little bit off, because if you think about, again, like those other stadiums you mentioned, the jewel is inside. Like there's the jewel of the field's inside, but on the outside, you kind of, the buildings fit into the fabric. They're not these alien UFOs that have landed like a circle in the site. And so that's where you get that old world charm. Now, I actually like the UFO. Like, I like this modernist UFO because it reminds me a lot of the Coliseum. Like, it really actually looks just like the Coliseum. It looks like the arena and the Coliseum had a baby.
Love it.
Like, I'm just saying, like, maybe that little baby wants to be back home with its parents in the Coliseum. And, you know, if the A's really cared about getting something in the ground and getting it built, they could start yesterday.
Right.
The city, if they wanted to truly partner with the city, because the city spent $1 million of the state of California and the city of Oakland's money trying to convince these sports teams to stay. And you know, to what end? Like, the Warriors left, and then they left and tried not to pay the bill on the way out.
Right.
And then the Raiders left, and also same thing. And, you know, I love I love the sports teams, and I love the players, and I love like the fans, and I'm a sports fan myself.
Right.
Like, it's kind of creepy when these like really, really wealthy individuals get to make such decisions for our lives and cities.
Can we talk just a minute about the site? I don't think it's even involved anymore, but I'm off the top of my head, I'm forgetting the name, but the Laney College site, or the site right there, is that even considered viable anymore?
Oh God.
or even in the running? How about, maybe not viable is not the right term, but
I mean, is it open? No, I don't think it's available to the A's anymore.
Right. I think was that the issue, that there literally was not enough real estate there to make it work?
Well, it certainly would have been like a Fenway Park, you know, really cool. Like, I think such a cool opportunity to like really nestle it into that place and, you know, make a partnership with Laney. You know, I mentioned that I was born and raised in the East Bay, and I went to Laney.
Right.
I went to Laney to play baseball, actually.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. When I left high school, my fantasy was to play Major League Baseball.
I love it.
Not even like D1, just like MLB.
Yeah.
So I went to Laney, and I don't know if you've seen like Last Chance U, but
I have.
Like, it's that kind of a setup.
Yes.
And it's awesome because, you know, community college sports, it's year round. And these are everybody there is really actually like, so like, just, this is their last chance. And so they're working really hard and pushing hard. So I played baseball there. And then that's actually where I transitioned to architecture.
Really?
Yeah, I did the AA degree in architecture there. I got a drafting degree back when you used like May lines.
I love it.
And then went on to University of Oregon to get an architecture degree. But so
did you play baseball at Oregon?
No.
Okay. Gotcha.
That was over, man. I was like,
man.
Well, it was at Laney when I went to Laney that I realized, oh my God, like, I'm not as good as I thought I was. Because there were some really great players.
There are baseball. And so my wife is a collegiate softball player. She played at UCLA. Her sister played at Oregon, and her other sister played at St. Mary's. So softball family. And it is an endeavor like anything, like nothing I've ever seen. I mean, I'm a football player and I love sports. I mean, they were hitting, you know, they tell stories of like coming home from Christmas break and like it's Christmas Day and like we open up presents and like let's go hit, it's like wow, like that is commitment. I love it. So
sure. So so actually when they were exploring that site, I was really excited about that.
Yeah.
I thought it could be really cool.
I know a lot of people just because of the location, right? Like you're talking about, to get that kind of feel. I think that location excited a lot of people, but
it was very challenging. They had to partner with Peralta colleges and and I think that's just, it takes a really special group of people to come up with that kind of a partnership. And I just, I'm not sure if the ownership of a sports team are those special people, no matter who they were. I mean, it's too hard for them to wait around for a community college organization to come up with decisions. And so there were some missteps there early on. And I think what happened was the A's learned from that. And so they've done a lot better this time around of building a coalition of people in the neighborhoods around the site. I know they're going deeper into West Oakland. They're standing up, for the pollution in West Oakland that's coming from Howard Terminal, which is great. I mean, it's obviously I think there's nobody and most people can see it for what it is from the A's.
Right.
That's cool. Like it's a win-win. Like if they want to help, clean up pollution because they want their stadium there and it helps the community around, that's good.
Yeah.
But again, I think the challenges for both those sites was always going to be how to get people to and from. Like, how do you do this really tactical incision of a stadium?
Right.
Well, call it a ballpark first. And I think, Dave Cavell, good on him for really pushing them to do the smaller version, like these smaller stadiums, 30,000.
Yeah.
So again, I think they can legitimately call it a ballpark.
Right. I respect David Cavell very much in terms of what he's done to just re-energize that franchise and the things that he's done. He brought the treehouse in, he got the tarps taken off. He's done a lot around there to try to rally. But that ballpark, I want to say off the top of my head, is right now the biggest capacity, or one of the biggest at least, in Major League Baseball. Yeah. It's massive. It is hard as heck to sell that thing out. And that's
it's not precious. I mean, I think that's what its value is it's not precious. There's a lot of remodeling to be done. I think a lot,
right?
Yeah, but I think, if they if it looks like the design that they're coming up with for Howard Terminal honestly does look like you could actually turn the Coliseum into that building.
Right.
It looks very much like that. And I think the thing that I like the most about the design so far, and I think this comes from Dave specifically, is in the outfields, it looks like they're leaving it open so you could have a whole meadow where people could come and watch the game for free.
Really?
Yeah. So I think that would be I hope that's what they're doing. It was something that, I know that's sort of the future. So I think what's interesting is are the A's trying to just copy what the Giants did?
Mm-hmm.
And, or are they looking to kind of create what's the next generation of ballparks? And to me, I think that's more interesting for the A's, especially being in Oakland, and it's such a, cool and upcoming city. And I think, what's really so important about Oakland is the public,
right?
People, the citizens of Oakland. And so if you kind of say let's make this smaller stadium that's 30,000 paid seats, but you have this really nice open outfield with this lawn that slopes up away, and just you could get 50,000 people to watch a game, or 60,000 people to watch that Bay Bridge series, and half of them are going for free.
Yeah.
And I think that's so cool, and I think it's available to the A's in both locations.
That would be so cool. I'm thinking, Petco in San Diego, it's not free, right? But they have the lawn in center field, or right center, something like there. And I've only been to that park once, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's gorgeous, and it's in the downtown, and they've got the industrial buildings in left field. And but I remember thinking that was a really cool experience, right? That would be it. It's almost a minor league type experience where you can be really close to the game, because actually, I know this as a groundskeeper, the A's have the most foul territory of any park in the MLB, meaning you are as far away as you could possibly be. And I've never had to mow it, but I've watched it been mowed, and it's a lot of extra grass from the baseline to, the first seat. And you go somewhere like Fenway. Oh my God. I mean, you can practically like reach into the, to the game if you so wanted to. So it's just that feeling. Yeah.
I totally know about that, because like when I was a kid, I remember Carney Lansford. Carney Lansford was the greatest hitter of all time. But of course he played for the A's, and okay, not the greatest hitter of all time. But he could have been so much better if he hadn't played for the A's, because of the foul territory. And he was always, struggling to get the high batting average that he wanted because of that foul territory. So there's so much opportunity there. Even here, I'm in Berkeley right now. So here at the Coliseum, they ripped that whole thing. Here at UC Berkeley, they tore the whole thing out and rebuilt it on the inside.
Right.
And I think you need to do with the Coliseum in the Oakland Coliseum. It's pretty structured. There's a lot that's good there, but I think the tree house is a kind of a hint. You could do a lot of fun things with that building.
Yeah.
And in a way, it's more of the next generation than just kind of making another old timey, ballpark, which in a way, so I think it would be fun for them to push that. And I think they are with the stadium design, and even in how, at the Howard Terminal side, I think it's, but I mean, the challenge with that is it looks out of place, and it does not seem to be, it just seems to be a little off on the waterfront.
Right. And I think kind of what we're hinting at here, I'm going to call it the Moneyball effect, but it's, if you've seen the 2011 movie with Brad Pitt or the book, saw a team like the Yankees that has quintuple the amount of revenue coming in, right? I mean, it's something that you have to factor in. And I think that's where, again, Dave Cavill's done a great job of how do I make this team is accessible? The Giants had a run 2010, 2012, 2014, where they won, World Series. And I mean, you couldn't get a ticket to that game. They rivaled the Red Sox for a sellout series. The A's were never that. And let's be honest, probably will never quite achieve that, but can still be not even from a success standpoint. I think they're a great team, but just in terms of, that level of corporate buy-in, I guess, I don't know. I think that's what makes the A's, it's what makes it fun. It's what makes it, you can show up and do something like the treehouse or have a center field like that. And I just think that's awesome. I think that's kind of who they are too. So maybe that's what you're hinting at, but
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the green collar, I like that. The green collar team is good. And, but the thing is they have to be really careful, because that can get damaged pretty quickly. I mean, would you consider the Warriors that anymore?
True. Very true.
Iguodala, on his way out, he said, he gave an interview and said, I felt like I wasn't even playing in front of the fans for the last few years already. They're it's not accessible anymore. So, I mean, what's cool about baseball, which is different than basketball, is it's outdoors.
Yeah.
And different than football is that there's so many games.
Right.
And so again, if you were to design a stadium or ballpark that acknowledged that sort of said hey, it'd be really cool to be able to just come have a picnic and check out a game for free, and because it's expensive out there, and we know people are not necessarily, especially right now, as we come out of the pandemic and people are trying to come, get their feet back on the ground. I don't think they're going to have the same appetite for these sports teams in charging lots of money to come see these athletes, that are also not being treated so great.
Right.
It's just, I think it's just a really interesting moment, and the A's they have a really great opportunity in front of them, and they're being given like a fourth chance.
Right.
Let's say that.
Right.
Which is kind of crazy. Like, you're only supposed to give them 2.
Right.
But they're kind of being given like this fourth chance, and I hope that they take it seriously. And, you mentioned like, should they give up on the HT site? And I'm like, no, like, don't give up on it, but just know that it's going to take time.
Right.
It's going to take patience. It's going to take listening. It's going to take a willingness to change the plan.
Right.
Because I think that they need to really be realistic, and also to be really like real and sober minded. Like, okay, it's, because for their marketing purposes, they need to say that they're going to get this thing done 2022 or 2023.
Yes.
But the truth is like, even in that steel recycling site, like, it's going to take time to clean it up. There's going to be a lawsuit, and they got time to finish the lawsuit and then clean it up and then get it ready. And then even with the draft EIR, I know they're getting this fast track process, and that's cool. And I'm not really, I think that's fine, but they still are going to go through the city approval process, which has not exactly started yet. And that, if you've been a part of one of those, they don't happen every day.
Right.
In fact, they only happen once every 7 to 10 years. So it's going to be a rodeo.
Right. Right. Oh, I love it. We were talking a little bit off camera about this, and this is a project. Did you co-found this project?
Yeah. Co-created it.
Okay. And it's called Oakland 2100. And can you tell me a little bit about it? Cause I didn't know about it before this, and I pulled it up right before we started here, and this is really cool.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, Oakland 2100 is a game about the future of Oakland. And so what we did is we built a giant model out of wood of downtown Oakland and turned it into a game board. And people come and they play with Legos and they build the future of Oakland. Oakland 2100 is this game that allows people to have these conversations around a model that people are playing with. It creates this loose framework that allows for flexibility underneath it. And as long as you meet the certain programmatic requirements, like we need to have a certain number of housing units in Oakland. Like, it's not a joke. It's not a fantasy. It's real. There's a fixed number of units that we need in Oakland every year. And we can pretty well project that out for about 80 years. Like, we know how many housing units we're going to need in order to have Oakland be affordable for everyone. And if we don't hit that target, then it just becomes less and less affordable.
Right.
And at the same time, we know how many jobs we're going to need to support those people. So if we know those things, that's kind of a physical program. And so the Legos, they actually represent what the development of Oakland might be if we wanted to keep it affordable for everyone and have jobs for people from Oakland. And so the game is to get all those Legos on the board. And the different colors represent different uses. So like blue is office and jobs, and yellow is housing. And then inside of housing, yellow is market rate housing, and orange is affordable housing. So it's really like, actually, it's at the level of what the complexity of planners and developers and city officials are dealing with, but with the fun of a game and the accessibility of a game.
Right. That's so cool. This is like just a fascinating idea. I love games. I love game boards. My dad grew up just like literally in my grandfather's wood shop building game boards. So this is just like, I've never gotten to see it with something that makes it this clear, right? And brings it down so that children can, take part in. But like you said, I mean, they're doing this at an amazingly high level, right? I mean, this is what urban planners are doing. So
yeah, and we were able to meet up with kids. We even got to, as I mentioned, we got to connect with Marshawn Lynch.
Right. Marshawn Lynch, Oakland favorite.
Yeah, well, and I mean, what people don't know about him is that he has a deep love of architecture and urban planning, and he studied that as an undergrad at Cal, which is one of the best schools in the country. And
right.
So, he really is a leader for West Oakland, and he set up this architecture academy with some pretty awesome people. Jeremiah Tolbert, I mentioned, who's a wonderful guy. And they have kids in West Oakland that are that are going to this academy and starting to think about how can they take ownership over the changes of their own neighborhoods and cities over time. And, having those kids play this model was really actually was the goal of the art project, was to be able to connect with kids like in West Oakland and those communities that don't oftentimes get asked what they want the future to look like.
Right.
And then, given these fun, tools and games to play,
right.
Should represent it.
That's so cool. That's so awesome. I'm going to have to track down those two guys. Both of those guys played football at Cal, right? Obviously Marshawn did.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Tolbert as well. We'll have to see. I had no idea.
He played football, but he was an athlete there, and they had a cool crew of athletes there that were totally into this, and they've continued that passion.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, and I know this came up because of I think it would be really interesting. I mean, we can't do it right now, but as we come back together and people are able to go to live events in real life, I think the idea is that we want to bring Oakland 2100 back out. And we'd love to partner with the A's and the city and, and Jack London and really think this out. And, not to say like this can't be done, but it's going to take all of us to get it done.
Right. Right. Awesome. Noah, thank you so much, man. This was spectacular. There were so many things to unpack here. Like I'm just still trying to process it all, but this was really cool. Thanks so much for your time. One more time, where can folks find you if they want to get in contact with you, social media or otherwise?
Yeah, well, I mean, just check out VibeMap, anything VibeMap. So vibemap.com, and you can check us out on Instagram. And we have VibeMap, and download the app and sign up for our newsletter.
Perfect. We'll put all the links to that when this video releases here. So awesome. Noah, thanks again, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Zach.